Ixalan has always been a place full of religion. The Sun Empire lives for the threefold sun and its giant dino avatars, and the Dusk Legion has a church. But with Caverns of Ixalan we go a step farther. 6 new gods are introduced. One for each monocolor and a mysterious 6th one. Today we will look at what binds them and what makes each of the gods special. Starting with the 4 gods that all share the name Oer, because there's a reason for this. And this reason starts with the inner sun, Chimu. She is therefore fittingly the god of the inner people. These Oerpaik pray to their sun and her 4 honored children. She has a 5th child, but more on that later. Chimu is always depicted as a sort of comet with floating plates or rocks around her. These are cosmium. The Oerpaik have learned to harness this cosmium. It helps them shoot these purple energy blasts that you see all around the set. The cosmium can turn inanimate objects to life, even when cosmium just touches the object. A pirate put the cosmium on a statue and it turned into a flying siren because of it. Other materials like amber can harness the power of cosmium too, seemingly sapping the energy from that stone. In any case, it can be passed on, and in this way the power has flowed into the core and the 4 gods that the Oerpaik pray to. Let's go by them. Oerpaik, the god of foundations, has many resemblances to the white part of the threefold sun, Kinjali. The 2 gods built humanity from clay and stone. Tok makes humans by tripling the amount of tokens you make each time. In this set, she will help you make more gnomes. It seems like the god is really about artifice. This seems to be the most flavorful because the gnomes often are built in the shape of Tok's temple. In the card Clay-Fired Bricks we see 2 people building a civilization, where 2 of Tok's people work together to carry bricks up a slope, towards Tok's temple. When they arrive there, 2 of her gnomes are made. We know this because they wear the sun sign that Tok has on her headdress. With Tok out, you would bake 6 gnomes into existence. That would all become tutus because of her temple. Looking at the art of Tok, we see flowing robes and the flowing of purple energy from the inner sun. Tok has a mask with 2 extra faces on each side, signifying that she triples your creations. She stands in front of her temple, as all gods do, but Tok just stands there as she is speaking to her people. And those followers, who we also see with each art of the gods, come from 3 sides. If the deepest foundation were to die, she transforms into the temple of civilization. The foundation has been laid and now the people still come to the temple of their benevolent god. All temples to the gods make a mana of their color, probably because of the faith of all of their priests. They also say what the gods did with the gifts of Chimu. And Tok saw that the sun gave the Oerpaik life. Tok taught the inner people how to live together, which is very important if you are to live in a sphere inside a world where you have about 2,000 other people for the rest of time. All of the gods can be brought back for 3 mana, which seems insane, but there's another drawback every time. In this case you will have to attack with 3 creatures, which will be doable if you have made at least 1 triple token with Tok. The land side of each god does enter tapped, so you will have to survive with your temple and the 3 creatures for a little bit. On the art of the temple we see the same flowing robes that we saw on Tok. They seem to almost embrace her people. We see the purple light of Chimu still shooting into the sky, and we see a bunch more people flocking to the temple now that the god is gone. This is probably because the god has helped the people live together as a large civilization. Weirdly enough, we see a resemblance in the mask of Tok and the blue Enigma jewel. Maybe it's because Tok really likes artifice. One question popped up when I browsed through the cards of this set, which is the difference between Kinjali and Tok, for example. Kinjali was the Sun Empire god that brought creation to the humans on Ixalan. She made the people from clay and the dinosaurs from stone. It seems like Tok is doing the same to the gnomes now and maybe to the humans as well. Let's look at this more closely with the other gods. Moving on with Oer, the red god of might. When you think of what transpires underground, you think of stable ground, which Tag represented, but you also think about the volcanoes, and Ixalan represents those. The first thing you'll probably notice is the giant dinosaur arm. Comment what else you saw first, but I don't believe you. The dinosaur arm might immediately link Ixalan to the dinosaurs from the surface, but there's more. Continuing with the art, we see another sun shape around a lion-maned human skull. We see a burning sword and lava coming from his temple in the background. That skull is his temple. Then we see the Bat Riders, which are his followers. The warriors of the Oerpaik pray to the might of Ixalan, probably to help them in battle, and when we see lion's feet, we don't know why. We look at the only reference of Ixalan in another card here, the volatile wonderglyph. We see notes of lava, of course, but also an important flavor text. Touched eons ago by Oger Ixalan's flaming Makwahitul, it still burns with boundless fury. Well, that's interesting, but what's a Makwahitul, you ask? It's the weapon of the king of the cat people, otherwise known as the Deep King. This king has been posing as a god in order to keep the Malamet cat people under his paws. He even uses this idol and the motifs of lava to reinforce this. I mostly think this is because this is the only place where we see the Makwahitul, and in a way it links the cat king to the semi-cat god Oger Ixalan. Conspiracy theories aside, back to our real god. There's more to our lava god because lava in magic often also means direct non-combat damage. And that's really what O'Neill is about. Because he grants you the power to bump every little bit of direct damage up to his power. So strengthen him or just make everything into pings of 4 damage. But turning a small 1 damage ping into 4 damage is already game breaking. So this chicken cat fire god is a must answer. In 2 of the references to the burning sun Tilonali of the set, we see references to lava. That's legit too, because the sun god is said to cast searing rays that spark destruction as all light fades. The avatar of the burning sun even does direct damage himself. In the last reference to Tilonali as seen in this flavor, we see a callback to Chimu and the alternate art with Quintorius in his flavor. It seems like the deepest god of destruction gives his followers gifts of hands set in amber. This amber has the same properties as the magical reefs around Chimu, so there is at least a connection here between the avatar of the burning sun and the deepest burning sun god. The god gifts gifts like this easily and you can't even really answer him, because like Tuck, Ixalan returns as his temple. The temple seems to have lost much of its magma, but it's still flowing with streams of lava and there's smoke, so there must be fire. The warriors are flying over, one even with a burning torch held up to ignite O'Neill's powers once again. The flavor notes that Oerpaik took passion and helped the Oerpaik harness it into anger or fighting power. Well, with that torch you may awake the cat chicken god by dealing 4 combat damage. Funnily enough, just the thing that he helped you do. See a trend here? It seems like every time you honor the god by doing what he helped you do earlier, the god will return. As if action gives them the power to exist. I want to note the alternate version of the temple, because here we see the creature that was found at the beginning of the story and all the way at the end of the story. This demon was found dead at the entrance to the core. It seemed to have been protecting the core against marauders from the outside. Many older Sun Empire people had been killed by that demon. At the end of the story we saw how Quintorius accidentally revived one of the beings that came out of a vat full of liquid of some sort. And now we see the same demon bowing down to Ixalan, where Ixalan holds up something like a lava bleeding heart. It seems like O'Neill will make an appearance in one of the coming sets, or at least one of his giants will. You thought you had it with the sick designs, but here's another one. The third part of the underground threefold sun. Oger Kaslem. She is a huge 3-headed snake with a giant headdress of magnificent monarch butterflies. And that's for a reason, because Kaslem is a true queen. Her followers are llamas and other cute animals, and her temples either move or they are just trees, so she will never be without a temple. They move? Yeah, look at this bedrock tortoise carrying a temple on its back. The flavor even throws a burn towards Tak by saying that some have strong foundations, but the temples of Kaslem are also wise. They don't have a foundation, but the flavor forgot to add that. Her temple is a tree? Well, not really, but it is the only one without a mural. It seems like the focus in this overgrown temple is on the statues, where we see the two snaked gods with a sort of cat creature in front. The statue seems to be the most important part, signifying the god, which makes the temple one of the most mysterious ones. Kaslem's totems are also made in the shapes of trees. This one was made so that it could defend the outer core against fungal infestations, or at least to help to do so. When you place the tree, it will first start to cultivate the land around it. Then, when you did so just enough, you flip the tree. And you get a walking tree. What doesn't Kaslem do? This one features the monarch butterflies in the art again. And the flavor teaches us that even though the old deck abandoned the caverns, the deep gods still kept defending it against those spores. We learn that the true deep gods have been sacrificing themselves for their people. Back to our butter snake. Her ability is to put creatures onto the battlefield for free. She costs 5 mana, but then you will definitely strike fear into the hearts of your enemy. Because if the 6-power trampling old lady hits someone, you get to reveal an amount of cards equal to the damage she did and pick a creature or land to play for free. She will need to survive like the other gods, but that's why we have the immortal ability. Ixalan has a comparable type of magic, where Ixalan wants to let the dinosaurs grow. In this only reference of the cavern set, we see a lore keeper trying to learn the secrets of her beloved dinos. And her avatar says that Ixalan's rays are fertile and enliven us, that it would give us strength and love. Very fitting for a Hydra lady of old. On the art of her normal temple, we see one giant tree. Many monarch butterflies in the foreground flocking toward their god. Apparently these outgrown flying worms are now what's left of her following, and we see 2 snake statues around the temple. Other than adding green mana, this temple lets you get your lady back when you have 10 or more permanents, which Kaslem helped you do. But more interesting than the change in pattern here is the requirement. Because having 10 permanents used to be called Ascension. While Descension is already a mechanic in this set, it seems like the designers wanted to make a callback to the most well-known mechanic from the previous Ixalan sets. And judging from Tendershoot Dryad, Kaslem seems to be a flavorful god to this requirement. Because she wants to make a giant flourishing place for nature, and when you get 10 permanents, meaning trees and creatures, you get to ascend the god back into her place. And it's good that she's there because we learn something new, potentially. In Cultivate, we see the god again standing around the green light with her snakes. Some butterflies again in the foreground, and the flavor is the most interesting, as it says that all seeds call to each other across infinity. We know this from when Ren could call the seed of the world tree, but it seems like the seeds are still able to talk to the other planes. So perhaps we will see Kaslem in an upcoming set too. Talking about the future, Oerpaik, Deepest Epoch. This snake knows all about time, even to the point of learning a form of time travel. The flying snake is being prayed to by 5 people who seem to be mages, or perhaps they must be scholars. Oerpaik is an almost obvious reference to the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail to represent the endlessness of time. In the background we see a circle sigil of the snake doing an Ouroboros. We learn about this love for cycles in the text box of the 4-powered flyer. Oerpaik is not only resurrects like the other gods, he also has your instance return with Rebound, because after you play one, it gets played again at your next upkeep, if you want. We learn a lot about Oltec culture here, because where the Sun Empire stayed in Naya colors, the Oltec dip into blue as well. While epochs don't seem to have much to do with caverns, we know that the Oltec had to wait for centuries in the core of their world. So they probably needed some hope through a scrying wise old lady and the talking snake in order to keep morale up. Before our infinite snake returns, we get the Temple of Cyclical Time with the round sigil at the top. Weirdly enough, we see almost no followers except for the flying dinosaurs. Maybe they pray to the snake. In any case, you get to tap this land 3 times, losing its time counters before you flip it back. Watch out for proliferate. We also learn that Tapik mostly taught the people the lessons of time, whatever they are. Oh wait, but we do know the lesson. It's don't try to find out what happens when you tempt the snake god, because you will get exiled to eternity. Or at least getting hurled into history seems like getting lost in space-time. But it might just mean you get demolished into the books. And the snake learns the old cave people to use a calendar too. Perhaps he also taught them that the world would end at the switch of the millennium. It's a forgivable mis-snake, because we once believed this too. If you wonder about what it takes to win with the Millennium Calendar, it will take you 8 turns with the calendar alone, 7 with another permanent tapping along, 6 with 3 and 5 turns with 5 permanents. Of course, you also need your opponents to have less than 1000 life. So that's a free lesson about time for you from me. From free lessons to very costly ones, we move to the bad god that was the enemy in the cavern story. Eclazot's story begins with the holy man Tarion, who seems to have been the first to be a vampiric follower to the blood god. His journal was found by Vito, who took Tarion's teachings as truth and began to seek his god. The Church of Dusk is very susceptible to religious stories like this, being a church and all, but the church and the heretics have split up. Vito claims to have earned the right of Tarion's role in serving Eclazot's because he has Tarion's spear. The spear has been claimed to have been handled by other vampires. In the Flavor of Legion's Judgment, another vampire says he has the same lance, and this is definitely a different one. So at least one of the 2 vampires is lying here, or Tarion practiced with multiple spears. Not sure how you would dual wield spears, but we can't be certain. Back to Eclazot's. The stronger air elemental really shows us power creep. He gains lifelink over the elemental, then whenever the bloodsucker attacks, each opponent discards a card. This is because everyone has to sacrifice something when the Deepest Betrayal attacks. Then, if your followers, because everyone must be Eclazot's follower, don't care to discard a non-land, you get a 1/1 flying bat. It gets worse, because if your opponent can't discard anymore, you get to draw a card instead, for every opponent that can't. In the art of the arch enemy of this story, we see his followers. First, you note the bats flying in the distance. Then, you see the small vampires bowing down to the god, but he already has his one good eye on you. Other than normal vampires, Eclazot rules over bat demons. Eclazot is such a fan of himself that he turns the vampires into half demons too, by giving them bat wings. Eclazot is an evolution to Crobat because he has at least 6 wings instead of 4. In the background of the art you can see the object of the god's betrayal. It's the inner sun that has been closed off again. Eclazot just wants to live in darkness. This is very understandable for a bat. We see the enclosure of his own mother in the art and flavor of Malicious Eclipse. This is a board wipe for small creatures that also exiles, because without the sun, a lot of Oltec would die. In the flavor here we learn that the eclipse is part of a plan to start a bloody reign, with Eclazot as a king and god of inner Ixalan. Again, very understandable. How can he sleep with that much light in his cave? The overgrown air elemental also is immortal. His temple features a screaming, and I assume dying man in the form of a pillar with a symbol of death beneath it. The bad god above it seems to feed on the anguish or death or blood of the man, probably blood actually. because in the background are a few fountains flowing with either blood or ketchup. In any case, it's sticky. Oh yeah, and the man on the pillar is also holding a bowl to catch the blood dripping from his own mouth. Neat. As for abilities, we learn that Chimu gave the Oerpaik peace, instead of helping the Oerpaik hold that peace or something like the other gods would. Ixalan ripped that peace away. What a kind god. And lastly, the Ancient One. This god doesn't even have a name. Might seem weird, but there's a reason. The Ancient One is all but forgotten. We see a soul follower in the foreground. Speaking about souls, this Ancient One seems to resemble one of the Echoes, the spirits of the elders from Ixalan. Perhaps the Ancient One is a culmination of all the forgotten Echoes. We, again perhaps, learn the same from the mechanics, because the Ancient One has you draw and discard before having you mill a player, and milling in Magic often means forgetting something. In the art we see a spirit like being in a deserted place. He's wearing the skull of a long lost dinosaur on his head, a triceratops as his shoulder blade, and still wears the symbol of a sun on his back. This might be a reference to the Sun Empire and the Oerpaik, who refer to dinosaurs as the avatars of gods and who see the sun as their religious focus. The crumbling staff seems like a moon now, but it could have been once a sun, just with a broken half and a few broken rays, and then the last mechanic. Descent, which seems to mean that if you delve deep enough, you will uncover the secret of this god's existence. And that means that perhaps, again, the Ancient One sprang to life once he was found by this one soul follower, bringing what we learned about the other gods to a perfect circle. Speaking about descent, look at this link. In Will of the Forgotten, we see spirits standing around a few forgotten echoes, together linked to a singular mask on the ground. This Descent 8 empowers the sorcery, but also empowers the idea that the forgotten echoes became altered, just like our god is now. We learn in Terratide, with a similar simulacrum of echoes bound to each other, that the bodies who drown will come up as echoes that drag other pirates to similar fates. And in Join the Dead we see exactly the same, with more echoes. And that was all that we learned from the Forgotten. They become willing to drag others down, and we learn that they are all linked through the descent mechanic. So we might speculate about the Ancient One, but we will not get a certainty yet. Descent 8 down into the comments down below to let me know what your favorite god is, and with that I wish you a day above the ground.